So, Stephen Shedletzky, I love
Present.
I love your nickname Shed. I like that.
Thank you.
Easy, it's fun, and it's ownable.
Yeah, thank you. And I identify more with it than I do Stephen or Steve. So
Anyone in your family call you Shed?
not really, because it was a nickname that started at summer camp where my siblings went. So we were all a variation of Shed.
Where
Um,
was that?
it was in Halliburton, Ontario.
Uh-huh. So,
So
so born and raised Canadian, still live in Toronto.
born and raised Canadian, but if you go a generation or two back, not Canadian. So on both sides of my family, Eastern European.
And where?
On my dad's side, Poland. On my mom's, my dad's parents, Holocaust survivors,
Wow.
and they have an amazing story. On my mom's side, her parents were both Canadian. Her grandparents left Russia, Romania, Poland after World War One.
So how did you become expert as you are and knowledgeable enough to write a book that's coming out soon called Speak Up Culture? Where did you learn all this stuff?
Yeah. So I don't believe in expertise because I believe it's fine if somebody else calls you an expert. I would just never call myself an expert. And the reason
Okay, so
being,
leave it to me, but
thank
you
you.
become an expert because you've dunked your head in it for so long,
Thank you.
even though you're a
So
young punk.
yeah, thank you. Losing some hair, but making it look all right. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you.
hair's a very 80s kind of thing in my.
Yeah. Nice. So, I think my story starts in a couple sort of key pivotal areas. One, I grew up with a stutter. So I grew up with a speech impediment. I still do have a speech impediment. I've learned how to work with it and overcome it.
Interesting.
I married a speech language pathologist. Good choice.
Just to get a discount.
Just
Unbelievable.
not so much for me, more for my kids. And so I knew what it felt like to lack confidence and feel voiceless. Fortunately, through some mentors, some positive experiences, some good education and training, I learned how to deal with, overcome, build some confidence. I started to dip my toe, thanks to a great mentor, to start doing some public speaking. Really, at the age of 13, I realized I have an issue here. I went to an amazing program here in Toronto called the Speech and Stuttering Institute, and essentially went to a summer camp during the summer when I was 13 years old, and got the training and joined a community to really not just work on my own speech impediment, but help peers work on theirs too. Right? Service is really the trick to the whole thing.
So many things bundled in there. Go ahead.
So I started taking little risks, little risks, little risks. We started chatting before, Jim, about summer camp. So one summer at summer camp, I had an opportunity to participate in one of the summer theater programs. It was kind of like Saturday Night Live skits of the summer, which is a lot of fun, a lot of comedy. And I ended up playing a character who had the same last name as me. No relation. If you go a few generations back, we come from the same small town in Poland, I'm sure. But I had this opportunity where I was up in front of the entire camp and I had to say my last name, even though I was playing the character of somebody else. And I totally stuttered over my last name in front of some 450, 500 people. And either nobody noticed or nobody cared. And it was the most liberating thing ever. The worst fear of any stutterer is I did the thing in front of hundreds of people and it made no difference. And they ended up performing in the play that night, and it was so much fun. And so thanks to this mentor in university, I started doing more public speaking. And I remember giving a 5-minute talk on overcoming my fear of public speaking. And it was the first time that I gave a talk that was about service, that was about helping others. Because, we know the good old Jerry Seinfeld joke that the number one fear is public speaking and number two is death. So you'd rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy, which makes no sense whatsoever. But I started speaking and started enjoying it, but I knew what it felt like to be voiceless. Further, deeply influenced by my grandfather, who's a Holocaust survivor and led 8 people in hiding.
Did you grow up around him?
Yeah, very close around him. And he and I are very similar, both gregarious and just very similar people. So I was hugely influenced by just who he is and his demeanor. And so, yeah, my grandfather was a huge influence and gave me a lot of confidence and courage to pursue a different path. I remember sitting in my cubicle on my first job ever, it was with an oil and gas company at a leadership development program. 1,000 people were let go first day on the job.
No.
Yep, post merger. And so I saw the impact of tumultuous culture and uncertainty, not just on people's productivity, but on their mental and physical well-being. And so I started seeing all these clues of the impact of leaders and culture on people's well-being. And so I've decided to write this book, and I am writing this book, Speak Up Culture, When Leaders Truly Listen, People Step Up, because I've been parts of teams and organizations where there's an amazing speak up culture where you can share ideas, even if half-baked. You can share your concerns. You can even disagree. You can talk about things that are affecting your work, even if it's outside of the workplace, like family or current events, and that it's welcome. I've also been part of teams and organizations and have clients and friends where there isn't a speak up culture, where you say something and all of a sudden it's a political taboo, and these cultures where certain things just aren't welcomed to be discussed. And that becomes very hard to navigate. And I'll take a quote from Andy Stanley, which is one of my favorites, that leaders who do not listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. And that silence is not agreement or consensus. That silence is fear or apathy.
No.
And at its most innocuous, it leads to missed opportunities. But at its most serious, it can lead to devastation or even death. I mean, look at the Boeing 737 MAX 8, which is a documented speak up culture issue, which resulted in the death of hundreds.
Having watched that documentary, that it was 100% a culture issue.
Yep, totally. I mean, there were multiple people who raised concerns, one of which is this gentleman by the name of Ed Pearson, a retired naval officer, a senior manager. He went to the general manager of the Renton facility in Washington where they were building the 737 and said, I've seen military operations shut down for less. And the GM said, this isn't the military, this is a for-profit endeavor. To which, I mean, I feel for the pressure that GM must have been under, but this was no secret.
So there's a community at Worth is interested in different business models, how things are working and evolving, and you're building a business, and it's around you and your team and the services that you can provide, and speak up culture. Sounds to me like it'll be the tentpole of the business that you're building. Tell us about the business of Shed and Speak Up Culture and what you're building. How do you think about it? How does it work? And what are the elements that make it go from a revenue point of view?
Yeah, so I mean, part of this I'm still figuring out, which is great. I mean, there are certain things that I know I do, which I love, giving keynotes and talks and having conversations like this at conferences or with organizations and helping them shift mindsets and actions and even changing systems to bring about psychologically safe speak up cultures. So that's one is keynotes, yep. Working closely one-on-one and with groups of leaders and their executive teams and meeting with them monthly, quarterly, whatever it might be to help them.
So there's the speaking, which builds the brand, connects you to other audiences, and it gives you lots of different inputs. And then there's a consulting practice.
Yep. And there's a more sort of intimate working closely one-on-one with leaders and their leadership teams. Which is great fun work. And then hosting workshops as well, just on helping to create high performing, high trusting teams. Now I recently had a conversation with someone who said, great, you've given a talk at a company and they want to roll out, how do you create a speak up culture across their entire organization? What do you do? Because I'm just one person. And so now the fun is forming partnerships and finding other consulting firm or boutique firms who want to partner with me to help create and roll out speak up cultures.
Yeah. And so the book will come out in 23, fall 23. You'll be very busy with a media tour. It'll build your brand. It'll create more of those opportunities. How do you think about building up the organization in the right sequence? Because the floodgates of opportunities are going to come your way next year. You're busy today. Zoom, COVID, and and the consequences of COVID had changed your business
Mm-hmm.
and how effective you can be. You've been giving speeches without the travel. I remember when, you said, okay, you want me to come to Rome to give that speech to this worldwide organization. Oh my God, that's 4 days out of my life, minimum.
Yep.
And now they say, well, we can do it by Zoom. So how has this changed your business?
Yeah. So, I mean, just yesterday I did 4 different events, all from my office. And they were all over the world. There was one day I remember doing a keynote in Romania at 9:30 a.m. I taught in a global class in a partnership I have with the Simon Sinek team at noon. And I ended the day on 2 hours with my Navy SEAL buddy teaching trust to a team in the Philippines in one day. Now, teams and executive leaders are hungry to get back together in person because in person is important.
But the world is hybrid going forward, no doubt. Huh?
I think so, and for me to Edward Snowden into New Zealand or Australia without the travel, but still have an effective conversation, I think that's great. I think that's really positive. Writing to me is not easy either. I enjoy writing. My productivity style is more on the rebellious side, and I'll take from Gretchen Rubin, if you know Gretchen Rubin's work.
I don't.
She has the 4 tendencies. I have them up on my wall because they're so good. There's obliger, questioner, upholder, and rebel. And I'm rebel, which means you can't make me do it, and neither can I. And so my productivity style is days and days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months of self-loathing and non-productive, and then flashes and moments of brilliance that I can't predict. But what's wonderful is I also work with a small team on writing as well. Research help, writing help, accountability help. But the wonderful thing about putting our ideas and thoughts and research and cases to paper and to make it tangible is, to your point, Jim, is I have to live it. We have to live it. And so I'm writing this book about speak up culture, and I have a small team working on it. And I've committed to the team that we have to live the message that we espouse, which is the great honor, the great reward, the great challenge of it. And the number of times I've caught myself in my own home with my family, with my wife, shucks, I have to live the message, and it's hard to, but it's worthwhile.
You thought about it and you wrote it down.
Yeah.
So,
and then you have to live it.
Okay. I've heard you talk a lot about the importance of planning, writing it down, sharing it for accountability, and keeping score. Take us through that. Give us an example of a leader that you think does that well.
Well, so there's brilliant research around. So I spoke at a conference in Jamaica. This was pre-COVID, and the person who was emceeing and who introduced me, we sparked a nice relationship, and she shared with me that she loves dancing and she really wanted to teach a particular type of dancing class back in her home country. And I said, go public, like share it. And she did. She introduced me, and she shared her love of dance, and essentially committed to teaching a class when she got back home to her home country, which I loved. Now, here's the fun thing. If we have a goal and we just keep it in our head, our likelihood of accomplishing it is about 10 to 15%. If we write it down, it increases to about 40 to 45%. We engage our dopamine reward system. We make it tangible. We focus on it. It's all the more likely to accomplish it because we make it more physical and more tangible, more real. Now, if we go so far as sharing that goal with someone that we have a trusting, good relationship with, and we can form some accountability, the likelihood of us accomplishing that goal is north of 80, 85%.
Wow.
Which I love. And so when she sort of declared that goal, I said, I look forward to attending one of your dance classes in the future.
How are you doing the dance class?
I haven't made it to her country yet because COVID happened, but I will go back and I will take one of her dance classes for sure.
You remind me of a friend of mine who I think is a great leader. His name is Emmett Keefe. And Emmett is American, lives in the UK right now. And I observed him doing this 20 years ago. That is, he had a big, audacious personal goal. and he would tell you that big, audacious personal goal, and he would broadcast it. And finally, I asked him, I said, one of those goals was to build $1 billion company.
Mhm.
The second one was he wanted to own a winning Formula One racing team. I said, Emmett, the likelihood of either of those happening is quite low. I was a guest of his. My wife and I were guests of his in Long Beach, California, at a auto race, a Le Mans kind of race where they took over the whole city of Long Beach, and it happened throughout the town. The first and I think only race of auto race that I've been to, and I was his guest. And at that night, I asked him. I said, you're quite public about these big goals of yours personally, and you're free to say it. And he said to me that he said it for two reasons. One is to discipline himself to reach hard and to be focused on where he was going. And the second was, you never know what who you're speaking to and how they might help you shape your goals or assist you in the pursuit of those goals.
Yeah.
And so he met a woman on the street in London when they were stuck at a cross light, and something happened, and they were there for a few minutes, and they got walking together and chatting. And all of a sudden, he tells this woman, before they were saying goodbye, that he was going to be in Formula One day. She looked him up and called him about 2 weeks later and said, "Remember we met?" She said, I'm an assistant to the head of Formula One racing electric racing. Would you like to come in and meet the head of the?" And he said, "Yes, I would." And now he owns a Formula E racing team. So that was the example he gave me of why he does that. And I hope he writes about it, because he has a couple of qualities of his personality. Oh, and by the way, he accomplished the other goal too, of building $1 billion software company. So it just speaks to what you say. And I've never heard those percentages before of the impact of formulating goals, writing them down, broadcasting them, and sharing them with the community of people who matter to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that word serendipity can come back again from that chance encounter on a London crosswalk.
You never know.
Yeah. But I think, when you share, when you share big goals like that, you open yourself up to ridicule, but you find who are the people who will support you in that goal, and who won't yet. Yeah. And it might be people close to you who won't support you yet, and that's okay. There's a great case study from the British explorer Ernest Shackleton, who is a polar explorer, and he was exploring, I believe,
found his boat.
Did they just find it?
Yes.
In the Antarctic?
Yes, and it's amazingly intact.
Yeah.
They have video of it. It's what we pictured it to be, and it's sitting intact on the bottom of the ocean.
Wow, I got to see those videos.
Under the polar ice cap.
So that one is a brilliant case study, because he recruited a crew that went and got stuck in the ice for 22 months at the South Pole, and the only thing that perished was a dog. Everyone else survived. How do you do that? And the way he did it, he started with a great ad in the London Times. And he could have said, men needed for, journey, bitter cold, must know how to, hoist a mainsail, all this stuff. But instead he put out an ad saying, men needed, arduous journey, long, cold, dark, bitter nights. If survival, honor is your guarantee. And he purposely put out a polarizing ad because he wanted to attract people who read that and went, cool, right? Which is going to be only about probably 2% of the population, which is great.
Why waste your time on the other 98?
Right, which is this one-way expedition to Mars, for example. There's only a certain type of person that's going to want to do that, and that's okay. And so I think it's a good case study for who do we hire and who do we bring on, and how do we not just hire for the skills needed, but the attributes and the attitude that will make someone thrive and be successful here. And then even further, create experiences in the interview process where we can see if they do it. So I'll give you a fun little example of this. My sister was interviewing for a job that required certain attributes: care, patience, good bedside manner, improvisation, ability to explain complex ideas in simple ways. And so in her final round interview with a panel of 3 interviewers, they said to her, out of the blue, no preparation, which is where your true colors really show. They said to her, teach us something that you're passionate about. And she went, okay. And she asked them to stand up, and she said, here's dance again. I love dance. I love choreography. I'm going to teach you a dance. Now, they weren't measuring her on their ability to become better dancers. They were measuring her on her ability to think on her feet, improvise, care, explain complex ideas in simple terms, good bedside manner. And she got the job. She got the job.
We were chatting around here, working on the Celebrations Pulse the other day, about a trend we're seeing that's concerning us. I have a friend who I admire and respect and look up to a great deal. His name is Jeff Sonnenfeld. Jeff is a professor, associate dean at the Yale School of Management. He's a remarkable guy and a remarkable student of business and leadership. And he's done 2 things recently. One is, a year ago, he was pressing a lot of CEOs of large companies to speak up publicly about the election law changes that were proposed in a number of states. And he and I have frankly had a disagreement on terms of the role of people leading companies and their responsibility to speak up on these issues, which I interpreted then to actually be very knowledgeable about them. And it was difficult to say that I have enough knowledge that I could speak out on these things. So, a terrific reporter in the Wall Street Journal, his name is Emily Glazer, wrote about Jeff at that time, March of last year, when the CEOs of Delta and Coca-Cola in Atlanta spoke up about the situation in the election law changes that were proposed in Georgia. And I was the counter quote, where saying, I don't think I have the right nor the responsibility to be knowledgeable enough about the details of that law to have a point of view that I wanted to impose on my. So I love the man, but we disagreed on that one issue.
Sure.
Come back to this is a lesson in leadership for me in so many ways that Jeff is teaching us all now. He and his team at Yale have also become the go-to for media who are judging companies' performance vis-a-vis the boycott of Russia as a result of the invasion of Ukraine. So he's monitoring what companies have pulled out, what companies are, I'm pulling out, but not right away. And others have said, I'm not pulling out.
Yeah.
And so he's created a currency. He's got the brand, he's got the personal brand, and he's got the team that's doing the research, and every media organization is coming to that. So he's taught me the power of data, about stature and brand integrity, leadership, and being the repository of information that other people want. So those are all leadership lessons there that he's taught us, similar to what he did and does in terms of encouraging companies to speak out. So it boils down to this question. I'm concerned that brands are becoming politicized. I hear advertisements bound for 2 different coffee companies, separate from Starbucks. Starbucks, with his amazing founder, leader, Howard Schultz, thought to be urban and edgy and progressive and left-leaning, all of those kinds of things. And now you're hearing coffee companies counter-positioning themselves to Starbucks as Black Rifle Coffee, and another one that I heard advertised this weekend. His name I can't remember, but it was in that similar vein, where the true patriots of the American culture, and that's why you should buy our coffee. Are we going to vote with our coffee dollars based on politics? Has that always been the case? Is it new? Where do you see that trend going?
I mean, I think that, so in the example of electoral rights and changing, one, I think it takes humility to say, at this moment, I don't know enough to make comment, and I need to learn more about it. I think that's honest, and I think I'd rather err on the side of honesty there. And I think organizations need to look at, well, hang on a second. Who are we? What do we stand for? What do we believe? And how do we make decisions that reflect that? If you want to politicize your brand, fine. But I hope that you stand for something, you have values and beliefs, and that you use your organization to make decisions that reflect those values and beliefs. And I think in humanity, we need far less division and far more unity. I'd rather say what you stand for as opposed to what you stand against, and to attract people who believe what
So
you're
the
for.
ongoing conversation I'm having with the esteemed Associate Dean, Professor Jeff Sonnenfeld, is my responsibility, I feel as a leader, is to manage an environment where people can have a civil dialogue, discourse on important subjects. Not to stamp out one or the other,
Yep.
and not to suppose that I'm all knowing about important subjects that are beyond my day job and certainly my pay grade.
Yep.
But to ensure an environment where ideas and thoughts can be discussed in a civil manner. And that's where we net out. It's an ongoing discussion.
So I work closely with someone on my team. We were introduced through work. I didn't hire her, but she joined the team. We developed a great relationship, and she probably
didn't hire. She just snuck in.
No, we were both working on a team. Somebody else hired her, and we became colleagues, and we've remained close friends. And I still work with her. And she probably has the exact opposite views of me in almost every major political category, like just complete opposite. But I absolutely love her as a human being. Like, she's just wonderful. She's kind, she's loving, she's gracious. And we've had a personal time to break bread together and just form a real genuine friendship and relationship. And we've been able to have civil conversations to say, can you share with me what has happened in your life to explain why you hold the views that you hold? And even though I don't hold those views, and even though I don't hold those views, I love and respect you as a human being. And I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
And we have a great relationship.
I have half a dozen friends who I know are the complete political opposite of me, but I still love them.
Yep.
And I love the relationship we have.
And it's that diversity that can make us stronger, I think. A friend of mine, Rich Deviney, who's a retired U.S. Navy SEAL, talks about the difference between skills and attributes. So a perfect example of this.
Yeah, please.
So they were in BUDS, basic underwater demolition training, to become a SEAL. And there's this one SEAL in training where the activity is to hop into a pool, go from one end of the swimming pool to the other end, and come back without coming up for air. That's the activity. And so this one young sailor hops into the pool, walks across the bottom of the pool, touches the other end, walks back to the other end of the pool, comes up and, grasps for air and almost suffocates. And the drill sergeant says, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I don't know how to swim, but I wanted to complete the task." And he went, You're good. Skill, swimming, we can teach you that. What we can't teach you is attitude.
It can't teach attitude.
And different cultures, different organizations have different mix-up, like a different mix of what makes you a success here. And so I think you've pinned one, which is you just do what you got to do to get it done, regardless of your rank or title.
Where else have you seen where attitude just makes all the difference in the world?
I mean, it's a difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. None of us can control what life throws at us. And, we hear the term pursuit of happiness. I don't believe in it, because we can't all be happy all the time. Happiness is a fleeting emotion. But what I think we can be all the time is fulfilled, right? Fulfillment to me is using our strengths to contribute towards something bigger than ourselves. And so one of these terms that I was introduced to is called honor antagonists. Honor our antagonists. The words antagonist and protagonist. So antagonist is a person, a thing, an idea, even something within us that is seemingly working against the plot. A protagonist is a person, thing, force, something within us that is working for the main idea. Now, there are tons of stuff that gets thrown toward us in our lives and careers that are antagonists, that are seemingly working against us. And the opportunity is to honor them and to see how they're there to help us grow, to ask thoughtful, meaningful questions. Like as human beings, we are naturally question answering machines. Like if I say to you, Jim, hey, can you think of a bunch of ways to double your income in the next 6 months? You'll just start thinking of ideas, right? As human beings, we automatically answer questions, which means shouldn't we focus on the type of questions we're asking ourselves? We can either ask ourselves disempowering questions like, why me?
What can go wrong?
What can go wrong? Why does this happen to me? Why am I so doomed? Or we can ask ourselves and others, our teams as well, more empowering questions like, where is there opportunity for me or us to grow? How are we qualified to take this on? What's the opportunity here? And if all else fails,
what does a good outcome look like?
What does a good outcome look like? Beautiful. And as my friend, again, this is Rich Davini, who wrote this book, The Attributes.
Sure.
He's taught me as well that if all else fails, you can ask yourself, what's a better question to be asking right now? In our cultures, we get the behaviors that we reward and we get the behaviors that we tolerate. Tolerate as well. And so my favorite equation for culture that I'm playing with is culture equals, in brackets, values multiplied by behavior raised to the power of power. So what I mean by this is, by all means, values should be clear in our organization. We should have them written out. I'm a big fan of values being articulated as verbs or action phrases.
Yes.
Like, for example, Enron had values. They were respect, integrity, communication, and excellence. Excellence, by the way, is my least favorite value. Like, it means nothing. Do me a favor, Jim, more excellence this afternoon. Aye, Captain. Like, what does that mean? And if we can't live
that marked excellence.
Exactly. If you don't know what the value means, how can you live it? And if you can't live it, you don't have a strong culture. And we know how Enron ended with a huge accounting scandal. But integrity is one of our values. Yeah. I think we should articulate our values as verbs or action phrases. So excellence, do more great work, honesty, tell the truth, integrity, do and say the right thing, even if it's hard, especially if no one's looking. So I think we need to establish what the values are. And the only way we can tell what someone's values are is by their behavior. And so if you live in line with the espoused values, you have a strong culture. Even more so, your behavior as a chairsperson in your organization, as a senior leader in your organization, matters more than someone who was just brought on in a junior role last week. Sorry, as a leader, a whisper is a shout, and everyone's listening. Further, it's values multiplied by behavior, because if we have a value and we don't live it, anything multiplied by a zero is a zero. Even worse, if we have a value and we live counter to it and tolerate it, now we can have a negative, deleterious, toxic culture.
No, I used to wonder about these are the things we celebrate. And I was thinking of the counter to that, and the counter to that was things we punish. But I like the way you think about it differently. You're influencing the way I think about it in terms of substituting tolerate, because it's the same thing.
And yeah,
you're either celebrating or you're tolerating, or you shouldn't tolerate it.
Yeah,
because
and I think
tolerating is saying it's acceptable.
Totally. And so there's a brilliant matrix that the U.S. Navy SEALs introduced to me, which is they call it the performance and trust matrix.
How did you do in the BUDS program?
Haven't tried, not going to. I've passed my peak. Yeah, yeah. But the interesting thing with BUDS and Navy SEALs is it's not the strongest and the fastest that make it through. It's the ones that, when they want to give up, they help the person to the left and right of them. Those are the ones who make it. And so
amazing.
Yeah. So they talk about performance and trust. Performance is typical skills stuff. Trust is typical attitude stuff. So by all means, we want high performers of high trust on our team. We don't want low performers of low trust. But who do we pick between the high performer of low trust and the low performer of high trust? And 10 times out of 10, the SEALs pick the low performer of high trust. Why? Because we can teach you how to swim. We can't teach you how to just jump in the pool and do it, right? However, if you are a high performer of low trust, you aren't doomed to be stuck in that box on that 3x3 matrix. Through feedback, coaching, the environment, right? Environment and culture really matters. You put a cucumber in pickle brine 10 times out of 10, that thing's going to turn into a pickle. Meaning the environment that we're in really matters and helps influence us. And so if we've brought someone onto the team who is displaying behaviors that are counter to the culture, are we having the hard conversations with them and saying, I know you want a big office, but I'll tell you, we don't do that here. Are you okay with that?
Yep.
Yes, I'm fine with that. Great. These are the behaviors.
Not everything's going to work out.
Are bad. We shouldn't have hired you.
Yes.
You know, shouldn't have hired you. That's on us.
The way you think, the way you trained yourself to think and observe is so helpful to so many. I can't wait for your book to come out.
Thank you. Speak Up Culture is supposed to come out fall of 2023.
Wow. So you got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we've thanks for the reminder. We've drafted 3 chapters so far, slated for 13. So we're on our way.
Yeah. So I can't wait. And I think it's quickly going to become a must read for everybody. 2028, we're having a glass of wine together in the Four Seasons Hotel lobby in downtown Toronto there. And I said, well, it's been an amazing 5 years for you, Shed, since your first book, Speak Up Culture, came out. How's your business changed? What's it like today, 5 years from now?
That's a great question. And I enjoy that vision of enjoying a glass of wine with you in Toronto. I mean, I don't think I want to set up a big training consulting company. I don't think. I've been there. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of brand policing. I don't know if I want to do that. But I love partnership and community and having great people that I'm working with, great team, and forming partnerships with other organizations who want to build upon the ideas with me to help it be pervasive and to help organizations genuinely foster psychologically safe speak up cultures.
You know, I can see the future too. And the way I see the future, I'm sure, you know, there are certain people that I like to spend time with and converse with because they give me attitude. They help me compartmentalize, clear this stuff, and develop an attitude or a point of view around a particular subject or a direction. And I suspect that I'll be telling people from today on that one of the people I like to talk to because they help me to think through things clearly, to define things, to understand things, and to catch attitude. And I'm going to say that's my friend Shed.
Cool. Thank you, Jim. It's been such a treat.